welcome everyone a new episode of Money Means Business. Before going into details, happy feast. We hope that you are all enjoying every moment with the wonderful spiritual atmosphere of feasts in general. Last week we were celebrating the Resurrection Day, and today it's Eid al-Fitr, so to all Egyptians, to all Copts to be accurate, because we are all Copts. Happy Eids, and we hope that we are going to enjoy it, and we pray to God Almighty to bless Egypt with peace, prosperity and welfare. Today it's going to be tourism and what are the efforts exerted to boost this very important economic sector we do have. Right after the short break we are going to be back with more, so stay tuned.
The global financial and economic crises of 2008 and 2009 is considered one of the deepest and most complex crises since the Great Depression. And although it began in the mortgage market in the United States of America, it created economic difficulties in developed and developing countries alike. As the repercussions of the financial crisis spread to the real sector, and then the decline in income, wealth, and credit resulted in a decline in demand for goods and services. In the recent period, the negative repercussions and effects of the corona pandemic have escalated, in addition to the Russian-Ukrainian war, on international tourism. Russia and Ukraine each accounted for about 3% of global spending on international tourism in 2020. Global tourism could lose about $14 billion in revenue if this struggle continues. And this is a matter of deep concern for the economies of developing countries as they seek to chart a path towards recovery. Tourism in particular is exposed to the risks of uncertainty and economic fluctuations, that tourism and travel mostly involve entertainment expenses. Also, during bad economic times, many people tend to keep cash, the liquid they have, to cover the necessities of life, but this does not concern the tourism movement entirely. Despite all these crises, the Egyptian government, led by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, had a more comprehensive view of promoting Egyptian tourism and working to get it out of these crises. The procession of royal mummies was one of the most important legendary events in the history of the modern Egyptian state. The entire Egyptian people watched their Egyptian kings and saluted them as they moved to their new headquarters in the Museum of Civilization in Fustat in an unparalleled military procession in light of the eyes of millions of people to Egypt. One of the most important features of this event was that it was purely Egyptian, and it was officially announced the largest cultural initiative to revive the Egyptian language through 3 songs and narrator sung and led by the great Amir Asli, which caused a state of sentimentality and national feeling among a wide segment of the Egyptian people. The military stand and military salute to the Egyptian kings were also performed by the head of the Egyptian state, and they were welcomed in an unprecedented scene. The event of the opening of the Rams Road, in which one of the oldest celebrations of the Egyptian state, the Apet Festival, was revived. It is an ancient Egyptian celebration that was held annually in Thebes during the era of the New Kingdom and beyond, and in which the statues of the gods Amun, Mot, and their son Khonsu were accompanied in a large festive procession from the temple of Amun in Karnak to the temple of Luxor, a journey of more than 2 kilometers. The celebration was a majestic scene in which the capital of the ancient Egyptian state, Luxor, regained its greatness and a huge legendary procession took place amidst Egyptian songs, celebrations, and chants from Egyptian literature. Where 99% of the work volume has been completed in the Grand Egyptian Museum, and it is expected that kings and presidents of the whole world will attend the opening of the largest cultural project in the 21st century and the largest museum of antiquities in the whole world, changing the shape of the most important archaeological area in the world, which is the pyramids of Giza, and with them the ceremonial transfer of the king's antiquities, the Egyptian Tutankhamun, as well as the sun boat of the Egyptian king Khufu. Egypt's archaeological treasures of temples, museums, and archaeological tombs are the backbone of cultural tourism, which differs to a large extent from other tourism patterns that Egypt is famous for.
Welcome back, and to start immediately, as we do have a lot to speak about, let me first welcome my dear guest, Mrs. Yemeni Salama, our tourism expert. Thank you very much for being with us, Yemeni. And before going into any details, happy feast.
Thank you for having me, and happy feast to all of us.
When I know that you are going to be my guest, I know that it's going to be a different episode, and we are going to cover all what's related to tourism. Of course, traditional and non-traditional. And there are things which many Egyptians do not know till the moment. And forgive my ignorance, I was one of them. For example, let's start with something booming, which is yacht tourism. I didn't know that we do have this potential, and we can be one of the destinations for those who favor this kind of tourism. And there was an important meeting which gathered ministers of tourism and transportation to implement the strategy of promoting yacht tourism in Egypt and making sure that there are no obstacles on the way. Would you please elaborate?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for mentioning this type of tourism. And of course, Egypt can be actually a top destination for yacht tourism. Not just any destination, top destination. Due to the fact that Egypt is blessed with a geographical location, a very strategic location, very easy to reach from different continents, Europe, Asia, and also Africa, having the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea, Suez Gulf, Aqaba Gulf, and of course the Suez Canal and the River Nile. All these are connected actually, and that is one of the gifts that God blessed Egypt with, and we should be actually working hard to benefit from this and to make the best out of it. And yacht tourism actually needs lots of rules, regulations, security, and also facilities. People all around the world who travel for months and almost for a year with their yacht. Those are high-end people. They are not just any guests or any tourists. So that's a kind of attracting the high-end guests that will come into the country and will spend money, of course, and foreign currency is very important for our economy. That's one thing. For those people, you need to provide facilities. Meaning what? Like at harbors, at anchoring spots where they will be allowed to anchor, to provide facilities. They will need to have
refueling, maintenance,
exactly, all these kind of things,
even.
catering, all these kind of things that they will need to use, in addition to some facilitations for our routine and bureaucracy, which exist in every country, but we want to make the stay of those tourists in Egypt as pleasant and as easy and less complicated as possible. Egypt is very safe, and of course the beauty of our waters is not to be compared anywhere else in the world, especially the Red Sea, which is one of my favorite destinations. In addition to that, it's not just nature. When anchoring, they can even go onshore and visit historical and religious places, which is something also that doesn't exist everywhere. Egypt is blessed with that. Anchoring in the Red Sea in Aqaba or Suez Gulf, you can have an hour and a half drive and you are in St. Catherine and the monastery and those religious places. Anchoring in the Red Sea, you can go also and visit many of those religious places.
Since
and so
you
on.
mentioned St. Catherine, there was also a political leadership directions to give all the facilities and to pave the way for having the transfiguration, the Great Transfiguration project, or At-Tajalli Al-A'zam project, as one of the best places ever. And inshallah, it's going to be one of the gifts we give to humanity. You know, from time to time, I always say that Egypt is the gift of humanity, and we are all the time introducing or presenting these gifts to humanity, including this project. Before going into details, since you mentioned that, would you please elaborate on it and how it's going to be that important on our tourism map?
Well, I see this spot in particular is of a great importance, not just touristic-wise or historical-wise, but also religious-wise. It's a hub for all religions. It's important for all religions, and we have held many conferences and gathering at this beautiful city in Egypt, St. Catherine, and it's in the heart of the mountains of Sinai. It's a very beautiful place, and we still need to build more infrastructure to make it easy to reach St. Catherine, and also providing more facilities. What we can do, that we can hold more of those events on annual basis or every 3 years. It depends how often we can do that. And like we did before, it was a religious gathering for all religions of the world. St. Catherine is a hub. And the stories about the area of Sinai in general is mentioned in all the holy books. So there is no actually debate about it, its importance, and we can use that because pilgrim trips will come to St. Catherine and they will enjoy staying there, and they need the facilities still.
This was the first thing which came to my mind. It's a pilgrimage.
It is.
Yes.
It is. You are definitely right. It's a pilgrim trip for all three religions because all the stories are mentioned in all the holy books. So that's what we need to work on. And of course, the Bedouin community will need to, as we know that President Sisi is now having this campaign, and we're launching a better life and decent life for every Egyptian. The Bedouin community also will benefit from that. And that's also a very important aspect of tourism, that it brings welfare to its areas. We do not seek to change the Bedouin community or any other communities in Egypt because their tradition is very important. But we need to raise their social living standard. We need to have them having more facilities in their community, and also it will be something that
developing Sinai is one of the state's priority. It's a state's strategy to develop Sinai, and here it's not only, you know, many people when we speak about Sinai, they thought that it's only South Sinai, Sharm el Sheikh, Dahab, or
the major.
No, it's North, Middle, and South Sinai.
Exactly.
This whole area, inshallah, it's going to turn into another place. I mean, this is also going to be one of the gifts. But if you permit me, because I wanna make sure that I covered all the details about yacht tourism.
Yes.
What are the heavyweight names in yacht tourism worldwide? I mean, what countries?
Well, Europeans and Americans, they have this is very in the States and in Europe as well. And they
in Europe, in Spain, Germany. I mean,
Greece, Cyprus, Turkey as well.
Okay.
Spain, Portugal, all those countries, the Mediterranean Sea. And
I mean, thank God we do have great relations with all the countries you mentioned. To what extent do you think that we can exchange expertise and to benefit from their experience in this regard?
Well, I think it's also important to put in our consideration that every country has its own laws and its own procedures and its own way of doing things. But how we can benefit, as you said, is just trying to take more of the experience, since they are ahead of us in this part of tourism or in this kind of tourism. Take their experience and then see whether it fits in our community according to our laws and tradition and so on, because also it differs from one country to the other. And that's a very important thing that also the travelers with yachts will notice. Anchoring in Egypt is different than anchoring in Saudi Arabia, than Jordan, than Turkey, than Nice or Monaco. It's different.
Yeah.
And those kind of tourists are prepared for such differences, but they are not going to accept sort of bureaucracy or routine or anything that will, you know, make their pleasant
spoil their holiday.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
course.
Like anyone, like me and you traveling, you need all the facilities, you need easygoing process and so on. So that's what we should do.
I'm asking these questions because I wanna have this as brainstorming.
Right.
I mean, age category should be taken into consideration. The social class, high end, as you've kindly mentioned.
Yes.
Of course, they have those tourists. You know, they do have experience in such issues. So
Oh,
they are
yes.
going all the time to have this kind of comparison.
Yes.
Between what they are going to have here and what they have had in other places. If you want to elaborate on this, and would you please correct me if I'm wrong?
No, you are definitely right, and this is the point. Those kind of tourists are high-end tourists. They're traveling with their yachts all over the world. So they know that there will be differences. But if I may say, they will not tolerate bureaucracy or routine that will be an obstacle during their trip.
Okay.
And that's what we need to work on. Still, it's everywhere in the world, but with a different percentage. Everywhere there is bureaucracy, everywhere there is routine, but we need to minimize the percentage of bureaucracy and routine. We also need to add to the facilities luxurious facilities. Those people, if they want to anchor on islands in the Red Sea or here or there, we need to provide some luxurious facilities for them, and also to have cooperation between all the ministries and organizations for the sake of this tourist, this or any tourist, of course. We need the organizations or the ministers to work together as a team.
Amen to that coordination, and this is exactly this was the reason behind discussing this when I found this piece of news regarding this meeting between Their Excellencies Ministers of Tourism and of Transportation, to make sure that everything is going on the right track. Right after the short break, we are going to turn back with the new markets, with the new horizons. China, yes, China. China is going to be one of our main markets regarding tourism. Right after the short break, we are going to return back and to discuss this in detail. Welcome back. Yumna, as I said, let's quote His Excellency Minister Ahmed Isa. Minister of Tourism Ahmed Isa discussed with Chinese officials plans to increase direct air flights between Egypt and China amid plans to receive more tourists from China in coming years. Meaning that this is relatively a new market. We are going to Asia and we should benefit from this to the maximum. Let me know.
Well, China was already on top of the list of tourists coming into Egypt before COVID.
Okay.
It was expected for the market by the end of 2020 that China will be exporting tourists all over the world, and it's going to be number one. And this was happening actually in Egypt. But then COVID happened, and we all had our share from what happened there, and now we are recovering. So the initiative that you just mentioned right now is very important because we are kind of welcoming back the Chinese tourists and bearing in mind that this is the largest population in the world.
That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we have direct flights, if we have facilities like we used to have limited number of Chinese-speaking tourist guides and Egyptologists. Now there are plenty of them, and we can cover the need of those and the request of Chinese tourists coming. And it became one of the very popular languages to learn in the field of tourism.
Despite the fact that it's very difficult.
It's
very difficult.
It is very difficult. It's ranked also the third or the fourth most difficult language in the world. Depends on the
dialects.
No, on the sources you're checking,
Yep.
and the ranking differs. But it is difficult indeed. And
1,000 letters in the alphabet, I think?
Yes,
something like this.
And they have dialects and they have forms. But despite all those difficulties, we have Egyptian tourist guides speaking fluent Chinese and with dialects as well. So that's how we get prepared. And we still need to have more. And also not just Chinese, but there is Korean, and the entire Far East is a good market.
In addition to India, because India was my second question regarding this part of the world, because I think this part of the world was a little bit, let me say it this way, neglected so far. But now the case is totally different, and we knew that we should diversify our resources, diversify our destinations from which tourists are coming. So those two in specific are on top of the agenda, true?
Yes, and also mentioning Latin America. Mexico, Chile, and Argentina, and Brazil, all Latin America is also something that was not really in the past. We were concentrating mainly, I'm talking about the past 30 years, we were concentrating mainly about the European market and of course US and Canada, and of course in the summertime we have the Arab tourism.
Yep.
But now those destinations are very important for our market because it also gives us a variety of types of tourists. And especially when we talk about Far East and Latin America, they have also mutual traditions. When they come to Egypt, they find similarities in many things.
You're reading my mind. This is exactly what I wanted to go through, because each country, of course, they have their own traditions, rituals even, and their citizens or our guests from there want to go to something in specific. For example, there are people who would come just to enjoy the nature, entertainment, tourism. Others, it's only cultural, and the monuments are that amazing for them, and they would spend everything they have just to go there and to witness themselves the huge temples and stuff like that. Others would, for example, I didn't know that there are wedding tourism, for example. And this was another story. To what extent we are ready for all this, and we have studies to know exactly how to deal with each.
Well, to be honest with you, because this is how we do it, I cannot sit here and tell you we are completely ready. We still need to work on many things. And as you mentioned kindly, wedding tourism, there are people who are choosing Egypt to come. And we have seen that on the social media, to come and propose and to come and hold their weddings here
In front of the pyramids, for example.
in front of the pyramids in a temple. We have noticed in the past 2 years that the temple of Philae in the middle of the river Nile in Aswan on an island became very popular among the elite and the rich people for holding their weddings, and it's amazing. It's like a 1,001 nights wedding, and we are taking good steps in this approach. However, what I would like to add, to put in consideration, that we need to promote other places for such wedding tourism as well, and we need
Such
to,
as?
for example, the oasis.
Okay.
The oasis, and I'm always, you find me tend to enhancing the local communities.
I know that, and this is something which I'm going to mention, but let's go into other places, because the oasis issue, we do have some very good
Okay,
news
we'll come back
regarding
to the oasis.
To desert in general.
To the deserts in general. But apart from that, we need also, the culture tourism is important. Our history is something that no one in the world can compete with. I mean, I always tell the guests when they arrive to Egypt, there is nothing called Americanology or Britishology or the Germanology, but there is Egyptology. It's a science for this land and its history and people. So this is something very important, and that's why I'm saying it's a science for the land, its history, and the people. What about the people today? We have many places that we can work on, and in the Mediterranean Sea, for example, in the Red Sea, using the beauty of those places. We will come back to the oasis and the deserts, because this is also something that we can promote, especially in wedding tourism, and also special events. Like in Siwa, for example, when we get to that point, there is a festival for dates.
Yes, sure.
We need to work on that more.
Shali.
Yeah.
UK lifts travel restrictions to Egypt's western desert. The British government's travel advisory body, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, lifted its non-essential travel warnings for the Farafra, Bahariya oasis regions in the Egyptian western desert.
Great.
Some very good news.
Great news.
Yeah.
Great news. I'll say touch wood. God bless Egypt, of course, because the tourism business is based on two things. If these two things are not there, then we cannot even speak tourism. Security and safety, this is very important. Internal and external.
Sure.
So this is great news, and as I said earlier, enhancing the local community by tourism. You bring tourism into those remote areas, then the people will benefit from that. But we need to bring tourism in the way that helps the local community, not imposing something on them, not changing their culture. I get really a little bit, unpleasant scene when you see in some places that the local community is building in bricks and cement, and they are abandoning their own style in construction. This, we need to put rules to prohibit that, in my personal opinion. Like the oasis Siwa, it should stay in its beautiful, simple nature. We don't need high buildings and towers.
No.
This, leave it for the cities. But those communities, let's keep its, how to say, virginality, to be virgin as it is. Yeah.
To enjoy it as is, to enjoy their way of life, at least for a while. I mean, being that simple, being that beautiful by nature, without any modification, this is another source of happiness, or enjoying every single detail. When you were speaking about our cultural tourism and about our monuments and about Egyptology, the first thing which came to my mind, that I was that much proud when I knew what was going on in Paris with the coffin of the sarcophagus, not coffin, the sarcophagus of Ramses.
It's a coffin, you are right.
And when I do remember every time that Ramses II was the very first mummy to have a passport and to have this word written, Egyptian king between two brackets deceased. I mean, this is something which I think is not ever going to take place except with an Egyptian.
Yes.
He died thousands of years ago but he still has a passport as a king. Because of what? Because he was born in this land, Egypt. To what extent do you think that such exhibitions and such events like what happened in Paris, and of course the exhibitions of King Tut and stuff like that, can promote, can have this kind of free propaganda for Egypt, and to give just a glimpse of the magic they are going to feel when they come here? I'm in tears, I don't know why, but
Yeah,
it's
I know,
okay.
it's very touchy. I would like to say something about what you said, actually, Nermeen. I always believe, and allow me to say that out loud, I never say the Egyptian pharaohs and the kings died. I always look at their mummies at the museum and I say those are the living mummies. Why they are living? Because what you said earlier, somebody who died. When did Ramses live? 1200 BC? 1200 BC, and we're still talking about him. We're still talking about his family, his wife and children, about his achievements, and his mummy is there, his body is there, you can look at him, and he's traveling and he has a passport. This is a living person, and that's actually the secret of the ancient Egyptian civilization. It was all about life. People sometimes misunderstand and they think that the Egyptians had nothing in their minds except death. On the contrary, they had nothing in their minds except life. Life now and life later and life after. And that's what's happening now. All the exhibitions that you're talking about, that's bringing them back again to life. They are living in the hearts and in the minds of people. Who doesn't know about Egypt? In every country, they learn a little bit of Egypt, the pyramids and so on. Those exhibitions, in my opinion, are very, very important, and we need to have an organized agenda, planned, so people know ahead. The exhibition of King Ramses is going to be run on annual or whatever in all Europe. This year in Paris, next year in Germany, the year after in Holland, and so on. We need to have an agenda, and we need to have also the agenda for such events in Egypt, not just sending our exhibitions abroad, but also special events, special
10,000 visitors per day.
Yeah.
Per day.
Per day.
Yeah.
Well, we can do that, and we have done it before. I mean, the airports coming from Luxor and seeing how the airport is packed, and I think last week we received 5,000 tourists at one shot in, I don't know where it was exactly, in the Red Sea, one of the airports. So we can do that. 5,000, 10,000, we are close. And
I mean, this is what happened in Paris, and it's going to continue until September, as far as I remember.
Yes.
With our organists having concerts in temples?
Oh, yes. I was waiting for that.
With?
Of course, with.
Right
Of course.
after the short break, we are going to turn back to speak more about concerts in temples, and maybe in the whole of the Grand Egyptian Museum, or the gym, which is going to be another gift from Egypt to humanity. Right after this, we're going to be back. Welcome back. With concerts.
However, however, so with, of course, holding events and concerts and folkloric dancing shows and all kind of events at historical places and museums, with the assurance that this will not harm the antiquities,
Sure.
and it will not affect the image of those places. Meaning what? Meaning the pyramids and the temples, those are sacred places for the ancient Egyptians. So if I'm going to choose a show or a concert, the context of this show or concert should be matching the sacredness and the of this place. And I'm not going to give examples, but I think this is clear. Choose the context, choose the topic, choose what we are going to present there, and it should be matching the sacredness of this area. Not just any show, not just any dance or any concert. That's very important. As long as we are keeping this in consideration, we're not affecting the monuments or the sacredness of the place, and we're showing something that combines the future, the present, and the past together, then it's fine. I am definitely pro, and with, of course, because as we saw, amazing fashion shows were held at the pyramids. Christian Dior, and the other one was I don't remember the names.
Concerts, and when I know that it's going to be Fatma Saeed, Amira Slim, Mariam Abu Zahra,
Yes.
I was very much proud of our artists, and I'm very proud that they are also females.
Yeah, of course.
Mariam Abu Zahra is such a violent performer who is admired all over the world, and she is picked by name for many of the opera houses, orchestras, to show her talent, which is really amazing. And she is the granddaughter of the great Abdurrahman Abu Zahra, our actor. Well, returning back to now the Great Egyptian Museum, or the gym, because with the, for example, with the event, with the royal convoy, for example, I think it made it very hard for us, and I mean, it raised the scene, it raised the bar. What we should do, or what we can do to exceed that limit in the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum. What the homework we should be doing even right now, or started long ago, to make it as an unforgettable day for all.
Well, as a start, we are already doing our homework. Meaning what? We already opened the gym for visitors. These are called trial visits.
Soft opening, in a way?
Soft opening, yes. Trial visits for Egyptians as well as tourists as well, but for restricted areas. So you cannot go into the areas that will actually be kept for the grand opening, but you can go into the atrium. You can see the statue of Ramses II, the hanging obelisk as they call it, and also the shopping and the restaurants area. You can look at the grand stairway. All this is our homework, because we are seeing how we allow people to go through the entrance and the exit, and even the point you mentioned earlier, which is the concerts and the events and all that, that's also preparation for the opening. What I think that the Grand Egyptian Museum will have a grand opening, and it's going to be like a festival, not just any opening, maybe not just one day, several days, different type of guests will be attending, of course. And of course, another thing that we need to do is to work on the, again, this is my thing, facilitations, facilities, and giving more time for the preparation and the announcements before the actual date of the opening, because till now we have no fixed dates. So it's very important for the tourism market to have enough time before announcing the date of the opening, so we can sell, because without dates we cannot sell.
Marketing.
Yes.
Yeah. Minister of Tourism said that Egypt aims to attract 30 million tourists by the year 2028. And this is going to be a rise by 28%, or 15 million tourists. Is this applicable?
Yes, we are halfway there, almost. Like we had about 13 million, which is almost close to 15, halfway there. And in the coming years, we shall be working on increasing this number by the things we mentioned earlier. And I always say, facilitation, less bureaucracy, less routine, so the tourism can flow into Egypt easily. And then we can have repeaters. This is very important. Those people who keep coming again and again and again. For example, I know from my personal experience, Germans, Americans who are coming for the 5th and the 6th time in Egypt, because during, you know, you're working, everybody's working, you cannot really have enough time off work. So when they take a week or two, they haven't seen it all. And Egypt has a lot to offer. So they come again and they come again. If their visit was actually unpleasant for any reasons, they will consider more than one time before coming again. So again, I shed light a lot on the facilitations giving to the tourists, the flexibility, and also giving them all the permissions and finishing the paperwork. And I see that people, when they come from different destinations around the world, sometimes they give compliments about going through airport and it was easy and so on, compared to other places.
And very much affordable when it comes to money.
Yes, Egypt is affordable.
You know, I do hesitate when I speak about something like this, but it's, I mean, it has nothing to do with us. It already happened. Unfortunate circumstances took place in Lebanon, for example, with the economic meltdown there, the devastating earthquake in Turkey, and of course the European conflict, Russia and Ukraine. This means that Egypt can seize the opportunity to attract more tourists who prefer these places, because as you've kindly mentioned, security and safety are the most important, or at least one of the most important issues when it comes to tourism. These situations really made us more attractive destination, and it really happened on the ground.
Well, the thing is, of course, with all sympathy to what happened in all those places, our type of tourist actually is always concentrated to come to Egypt for various reasons. Being in the region also, next to those areas, people who booked a trip to one of those countries, for example, and then because what happened, they have to cancel, it's easy to attract this kind of tour because close. Flights can be easily changed. You're not far away from...
This is what I wanted to hear. On the ground, we do have this flexibility?
Not yet as we wish, but we do have. We do have, and it happened. It happened, but we need to work on it a little bit more in order to have this kind of flexibility. Changing flights, hotel bookings, because some hotels, they are a chain. So you can change that easily. Yes.
To add to what you have said regarding the types of tourism, as I am a little bit interested in sports, for example, and you spoke about repeaters, I had multiple interviews, for example, with the president of the UYPM or the president of the International Federation of Modern Pentathlon. He came here maybe 20 times with as Egypt is all the time, at least twice a year, organizing World Cups of Modern Pentathlon, attracting hundreds of modern pentathletes, their coaches, their administrative staff, manager, you name it. And in few days from now, for example, we are going to organize the World Cup for gymnastics. So it's going to be also another opportunity. How do you see sports tourism in Egypt, and to what extent they can be such another source of having more repeaters who came here as only athletes or competitors? They can return back as travelers or tourists.
I see it very promising and very important as well, since our population is majority youth. So it's also very good that we as locals will benefit from that, to give and show role models in sports. And of course, we have many Egyptians who are golden medals obtainers in many of the various sports. So I see this very promising. And again, we still need to, we used to have beautiful championships for squash, for example, at the pyramids.
And in Hurghada.
And in Hurghada.
Yeah.
And by the Red Sea and by the Mediterranean Sea, we need to use.
And one of them, I think it was 2 years ago, just beside the Museum of Civilizations.
Exactly. And you know what? For any athlete, it's going to be a dream for him to participate in a championship at the pyramids, for example. It's like a dream being there. So it will attract more of the athletes, even if they are not in the original games, but they will come to just play. Like we can make our own championships at those places. Fishing, Hurghada, 2 months ago, there was also the international fishing competition. And I remember that Egyptians also got the golden medal and so on. So fishing.
Underwater photography, this is another world.
Scuba diving.
أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الصلاة خير من النوم الصلاة خير من النوم الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
عيد سعيد let's enjoy this happy day عيد مبارك come on let's celebrate
diving, you
Scuba
name
diving,
it, we have
yes.
everything. We are blessed. I always say Egypt is blessed to offer all kinds, and I mean all kinds of tourism. There is nothing that we don't have. Deserts, waters, history, religion, even curing and health tourism.
Sure.
What a country could have all that?
Egypt.
Egypt. Egypt, where it all began, as we
Yeah.
said.
Yes.
Yeah.
I enjoyed our discussion.
Same here.
And inshallah, we are going now to leave you, but with a promise to see you in more episodes of our program.
Thank you so much for having me, and happy feast for Nile TV family and all the Egyptians. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
were very much delighted to have with us Yemeni Salama, our tourism expert. And by this, we come to the end of this very special episode of Money Means Business. Till we meet again same time on Nile TV International. Many thanks for watching, and happy feast once again to all our dear viewers all over the world. This was Yemeni Abdurrahman.
An Egyptian-Qatari consortium won a tender put forward by the Libyan government to construct a power plant worth 800 million euros. And the consortium announced in a disclosure to the Egyptian Stock Exchange that the capacity of the Zaltim power plant that the consortium intends to implement is 1,044 megawatts. And it is scheduled to start operating at the end of 2024. Provided that it reaches full operation. In mid-2025, explaining that the project scope of work includes design, supply, installation, and construction. Hossam Hiba, chairman of the Investment Authority, said that net foreign direct investment flows have exceeded $5 billion since the beginning of the current fiscal year, and we target $10 billion by the end of the year, adding that there are new amendments to the current investment law to grant incentives that include facilitating procedures for granting a golden license and reducing profits tax capitalism. The media center of the Council of Ministers reported that Egyptian imports of private cars decreased by $4.9 million. He explained it recorded $11.8 million in January 2023 compared to $16.8 million in January 2022. Tourism companies welcomed the decision of the Minister of Transport regarding the incentives granted to cruise ships frequenting Egyptian ports, and the companies indicated that this measure would work to attract more shipping lines operating in the cruise ships to Egyptian ports during the coming period. One of the most prominent incentives demanded by companies and agencies of tourism activity is the unification of fees and procedures that are followed in dealing with cruise ships in Egyptian ports. Dr. Muhammad Maid, Minister of Finance, participated in the spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank in Washington, reviewing the Egyptian vision in dealing with global challenges and containing shocks. During the meetings, the minister presented the Egyptian vision for positive and flexible dealing with global challenges, containing internal and external shocks, efforts to accelerate economic recovery, achieve sustainable growth rates, and maintain fiscal discipline policies. Fitch Solutions, a research institution, said that Egypt is intensifying its efforts to localize the pharmaceutical industry and reduce dependence on imports. In addition to localizing the industry, it is seeking expertise in specialized sectors such as vaccine development. In its quarterly report on the healthcare sector, it referred to Egypt's plans to launch a base for manufacturing medicines for critical diseases, reflecting the efforts made to improve the comprehensive health insurance program that was launched in 2020. A report by Fitch agency pointed to some positive indicators about the information technology sector in Egypt, as it indicated a significant growth in the information technology market in Egypt, especially the high levels of income and demographics, the digitalization of the public sector, and opportunities provided by the new administrative capital project. The software and services industry sector has also witnessed a positive development in Egypt, which has emerged as a major regional center for the provision of external services. This development has been driven by local investments and international companies, as the government is actively promoting the growth of information technology industry and upgrading it from a call center to a valuable information technology solution. Walid Gamaluddin, chairman of the General Authority for the Suez Canal Economic Zone, inaugurated the foundation stone for the Indian Flex Egypt factory, which specializes in the production of polyethylene PET in the industrial zone in Sukhna, with investments amounting to $110 million. The head of the Suez Canal Economic Zone expressed his happiness at the presence of Indian investments in the industrial zone in Al Sukhna and the presence of the Flex factory, which is one of the largest Indian companies operating in this field. Dr. Mohammad Shakir, Minister of Electricity and Renewable Energy, received the CEO of a Chinese company to discuss ways to support and enhance cooperation between the sector and the company. Dr. Shakir praised the distinguished relations between the Egyptian electricity and renewable energy sector and Chinese companies, pointing to the active participation of the Chinese side in the Egyptian electricity sector projects, which were evident during the past decades. The minister pointed out that there is cooperation with international companies to start discussions and studies to implement pilot projects to produce green hydrogen in Egypt, as a first step towards expansion in this field to reach the possibility of export, stressing the sector's readiness to cooperate with various parties in this field.